So, Joan, let me tee it up for you. Is it true that the Beltway press isn't terribly interested in these debates and arguments on the left?
You know, I would go beyond that, Howie, and I would say that the Beltway media doesn't take enough interest, but moreover, likes to kind of kick the base and loves nothing more than when President Obama stands up to the base or the dissatisfied parts of the base, let's say that, on these budget issues and on these taxing and spending issues. That is seen as a sign of manhood in the Beltway when Democrats do that to liberals and progressives.
Is this the so-called liberal media we're talking about that enjoys seeing Obama?
I don't believe that we have a liberal media, so you know, we can have another segment on that. I don't believe that the media is liberal. The media are liberal. I think that there is a status quo Beltway consensus, and people who think our tax rates should be higher, people who are really super concerned about our jobless recovery, the number of people still left out, people who are still losing their homes. That whole progressive economic side of things is barely covered. And when President Obama does something to sneer at his base, or when Robert Gibbs calls us the professional left and acts like we're a bunch of communists, the Beltway media applaud. And so it's a really dysfunctional relationship, which is why we have the blogosphere, which is why, you know, we have our own media at this point.
Speaking of the blogosphere, John Arvosis, look, the media are always looking for signs of civil war in the Republican Party. A bunch of freshmen defect from John Boehner's budget deal. That's a big story. Among Democrats, not so much.
No, you know, it's been interesting the last few years because on the left, I think, disaffection with Obama began pretty early, certainly with the gay community, and then it spread out, I think, to other communities as well, other parts of the Democratic base. And you've never really seen any, I think, deep coverage of what is actually going on in terms of Obama's relationship with his own party. And I'd go so far as to say I shouldn't have even just said the base. I talked to folks on the Hill, and whether they're moderate senators or moderate chiefs of staff, I should say, or others, they're just as unhappy with the president, a lot of us are, but it's not being reported.
And the reason it's not being reported, John, would it have to do something like this? Is there a media mindset that, well, liberals may whine about Obama, but they're really not going to have any choice but to support him next year, so why should we pay attention?
I think it's more than that. I think that, as Joan was saying, there's a little bit of a, not a disaffection, but a little sense of, oh, the left, you know, they're so unhappy. Cute. But yeah, they're so cute. But look at those Tea Party people. They're crazy. Wouldn't they be fun to cover? And I think the media almost thinks it's more fun to cover left disaffection than, right disaffection than left.
Joan Walsh, is there a media mindset that says that what the left wants, whether it's the public option on health care or higher taxes for at least some Americans, is politically unrealistic, and therefore we shouldn't devote a lot of column inches to it?
I think that's definitely part of it, and I don't know why you know, people in the media get to decide that. The tax rates we had during the Clinton administration are now apparently off the table when they were part of, not the only thing, but they were part of bringing us kind of unprecedented prosperity. But somehow to suggest we go back to that makes you kind of a crazy radical. And so, yeah, there is a kind of bias for the status quo, a bias for what's perceived as being in the middle. And I think actually, you know, what you asked about, well, the left is going to go with Obama anyway. I think that is part of it. I think that, you know, we've seen these polls lately that say, in the end, Democrats accept, for the most part, accept that Obama is going to compromise, whereas Republicans want no compromise. So it's also kind of a problem with the Democratic mindset that we're the people who say, well, God, we don't want the government to shut down, and what if people don't get their welfare checks or soldiers aren't getting paid? Okay, we'll compromise. I mean, it's amazing to me that John Boehner made that deal, and then, you know, last Friday night that progressives were upset about, and then he can't even get his own full caucus to vote for it. He's got to go and get 81 Democrats.
But that's a good point. And John, wasn't the media focus during the whole budget negotiation what would satisfy John Boehner and the Tea Party conservatives, not what would satisfy the left wing of the Democratic Party?
The media was, but I would posit that part of the problem, though, was the Democrats. It wasn't as if the president set a bottom line, and we all know that president, when he sets a bottom line, he's just not going to buckle. No, I mean, everybody knew the president tends to give in too much, so that even, frankly, his speech this week, the president gave a great speech, I thought. He really laid down the line on all of these issues, Social Security, Medicare, etc. But we know he doesn't really stick to his word, whereas those crazy Republicans, ooh, they don't give in. So
but the Democrats' whole approach,
it's partially the Democrats' fault, I would argue.
One thing that you and Joan seem to agree on is there is a bias in the mainstream press, I'm sure a lot of people disagree with this, toward the status quo, maybe even toward the center right.
Yes.
Does this drive you nuts?
Well, it does. It does because of what Joan, I think, had said was sort of the lack of respectability, in the sense that it almost is a sense in the media that people on the left aren't serious, that they're either not seriously taking on the president or their actual views themselves are not serious because, oh, they're just crazy lefties and they don't like to. My favorite is when the media says, the only reason you're upset with Obama is because you're a liberal and liberals just don't believe in compromise and that's crazy. Well, no, liberals believe in compromise when it's necessary. They don't believe in compromise as God.
There have been a few stories about this. The Washington Post ran one about liberals being upset with the president, John Walsh. But in terms of that budget deal and the negotiations that led up to it, and it was the same thing in the lame duck session when the compromise on the Bush tax cuts for the wealthy. There is this recurring theme among people, not just on the left, but primarily or particularly on the left, that Obama is too passive, that he gets into the negotiations too late, and then he surrenders too much. You got into a Twitter fight about this on this very subject, did you not?
I did. I got into a couple of Twitter fights. I mean, one thing that I do want to say is that we really can't generalize about the base. The thing about the Democratic Party right now is that there are a lot of bases. There are a lot of pieces of the Obama puzzle. So that, for example, African Americans tend to be relatively pleased with him. Now his standing with African Americans dropped from the 90s to 85, the lowest it's been. That's very interesting to me. But for the most part, African Americans are happier than the rest of the base. Liberals, even polls week to week, month to month, show liberals 79 to 85% of liberals are happy. So, those of us who get to go on TV have a responsibility to say, I speak for me. I have these values. I care about progressive economic politics. I'm unhappy for these reasons.
Do you get pushback from people on your side of the political spectrum when you criticize the president because you think he gave away too much?
Oh, absolutely, I do, and that's what's great about Democrats. We argue, we debate, we fight. There are people who feel that this president is doing all he can with the Congress that he has, that even the Democrats he has are blue dogs. Even last year when he had allegedly for a half hour 60 votes, he didn't have 60 votes. He had Joe Lieberman and Mary Landrieu and right. Ben Nelson. He's never had mandate, even among Democrats, for progressive policies, and that we're all being a little bit too impatient with it.
What's interesting, though, is on the left, you do see that a number of sort of the media types, or I would say, progressive media types, such as Ezra Klein with the Washington Post, Matt Iglesias with Think Progress, people who tended to be more in Obama's camp, have gotten much more critical of late about the budget deal. So you're seeing, yes, some people defend him, but it's fewer now, I see.
Right, but I continue to wonder why that isn't more of a story for those of us who aren't in any ideological camp. We love fights, we love arguments, we love dissension, but we seem to love it more on the right. Yeah. We'll have you back to talk about this. John Aravosis, Joan Walsh, thanks for joining us, especially with the election.